Greetings, Quester. The Meddlesome Meeples present Tome Talk with Matt and Richard.
Hello and welcome to Tome Talk, and this week Matt is going to be telling us about The Final Empire, which is a book by Brandon Sanderson.
That's correct. Now, this book is sometimes referred to as Mistborn. It's sometimes referred to as The Final Empire. Its full title is Mistborn, The Final Empire. It's the first book of the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this was released back in 2006 via Tor Books, and for those who perhaps familiar with some of our other Tome Talks, remember we talked about The Wheel of Time, one of our earlier Tome Talks by Robert Jordan. Brandon Sanderson is the writer that was brought in to finish The Wheel of Time after Robert Jordan unfortunately passed away.
Right, okay. So he has done some Wheel of Time as well.
Yeah, so a name familiar to many. He's won quite a number of awards for his various books. Now, this one is a fantasy series. It's set in a dystopian world of myths and abilities and brown plants, and it's quite an interesting world that he's built here. Now, just a little bit of setting, so I'm going to be very careful as usual not to give any spoilers. Now, 1,000 years prior to the events in this book, there was a hero which fought some danger, some terror called the Deepness. Now, we don't know much about the Deepness, and this is something that you'll find as you go through the book. It's just a very little references throughout the entire series. However, this hero then adopted the title Lord Ruler and forged what he called the Final Empire. He basically remade the world in his own image. Now, he's still alive 1,000 years on. He's still the absolute ruler of the Final Empire.
Not rotting on his throne or anything.
No.
Okay.
And what's interesting as well is that the nobility of the Final Empire is actually the descendants of those who helped him, his friends, from back when he became this powerful being.
Okay, yeah.
So he sort of kept them and their descendants close. And he gave them the ability, which was basically a genetic trait then passed on from his friends down through his lines, through their lines, through the nobility, of allomancy. Okay. Now, have you heard of allomancy before, or allomantic powers?
Not really. Sounds something to do. Just the sound of it sounds a bit like alchemy with elements. But,
yes.
Okay.
Very, very good. Okay. Basically, allomancers ingest a metal or shards of metal, and then from that they do what they call burn the metal, which is they consume it within them to enable them to access an allomantic power.
Right.
So allomancers typically would have access to a single one of the 16 allomantic powers. So, for example, someone might be able to burn pewter and become incredibly strong. It enhances their physical abilities, their physical strength. Some can burn to either push or pull on people's emotions. Some can speed up or slow down time. There's a lot of different abilities.
So is this with 16 different types of metal?
16 different types of metal. Each one gives it the allomancer a unique ability. Now, there are also ones called Mistborns, which is like a rare subset of those allomancers. Now, a Mistborn can burn all 16 types of metal and gain access to all 16 powers.
Easily all in one.
So, they are the Mistborn.
Okay. Now we know why it's called that.
Now we know why it's called Mistborn. Now, in the current setting, obviously you've got the fabulously wealthy nobility, and then you've got the other group called the Scar, who are basically a slave class of people, peasant class of people, very brutally treated, and you get that very early on from the books. The first pages introduce you to a group of Scar, and you learn very quickly the kind of life that they've been forced to lead by the Final Empire.
It makes me mad.
It does. It really riles you up. But we're also introduced to one of the book's two main characters at that point, called Kelsier. The first one is called Kelsier. Now, he's a half-Scar thief.
Half-Scar.
Who's kind of
He's
not
got
quite a legend, but he's
some money.
He's not got some money at this point.
Okay.
He, as you learn, was basically prior to the setting of the book, about 3 years before, I think, if memory serves. He was sent to these mines that are controlled by the the Lord Ruler, and I think his wife's been killed. He has been very brutally scarred, and people recognise him and they know who he is, not by his name but by his reputation because of the scars.
Right.
Because he's the only one that's survived these mines.
So he is a scar who gets recognised by his
scars.
That is pretty bad. Yeah. Even though he's only a half scar.
Yeah. But basically, although these allomantic powers are passed on through the genes of the nobility, some of the nobility have been naughty with their scar slaves at times, which is why there are occasional ones like Kelsier who have those allomantic powers. Because,
right, so the scar got that right.
Yeah. So, and we find out early on that he really wants to free his people.
Okay, he likes his people.
He likes his people, and he doesn't like the way that the Empire treats his people. Okay. And he's kind of known as a bit of a trouble causer who goes from place to place, but he's actually planning a rebellion against the Empire. Now, this all sounds pretty fairly standard in a fantasy setting, doesn't it? There's nothing particularly...
Well, kind of, but it does sound a little bit more... I don't know, there is something different about it. The way you say it's a dystopian. That sounds like a bit of a different element, and the fact that it's to do with ingesting the metals, that's a little bit of a different mechanic.
This is the thing that, for me, sets this apart from, having a fantasy book with a wizard that comes along and casts a fireball or something like that. This is...
Dragon fireworks.
Yeah. This is something that's a lot more carefully thought out, kind of like I said with the Wheel of Time, the abilities in there. This is a system that's a lot more carefully worked out on how these powers correlate to one another.
But there has to be constraints and a cost, otherwise there's no threat or anything. So
that's right, and he does that very well. Now, there was, I think it was the Washington Post, if memory serves, said that the powers kind of felt like something from a video game, like a cheat. You press XXY to get this power sort of thing. But actually, I thought it was it kind of sets it apart from a lot of the other ones. And
actually, I was thinking it sounds like a good game.
Yeah.
Board game I was thinking, but
there has been a couple of games. There is a board game for the Mistborn. I believe there was also a card or a dice game, something smaller.
Did it get banned for people eating mercury while playing?
And the rights have been opted for a film as well, and I think there's a screenwriter been assigned to develop Mistborn into a film. Okay. But yeah, so we've got Kelsier, who's one of the main characters. The other main character we meet early on is called Vin.
Okay.
Now, she doesn't realise that she has these... Well, she knows she has abilities, but she doesn't quite know what those abilities are or how they got.
She hasn't eaten the right metal yet.
Yeah, and she knows that she can sort of slightly affect people's emotions. She thinks it's just a sort of luck type thing, that she can maybe get people to trust her that wouldn't ordinarily be able to. She doesn't realise that she can pull and push on people's emotions.
Wow.
But Kelsier and
she's an attractive woman.
Yeah. She's a street urchin.
Oh, is she?
She's a street urchin. And Kelsier and his crew meet Vin, realise what she's actually capable of, and Kelsier and his team start to train her in the use of her different abilities. Yeah. But Kelsey's got this plan to bring down the final empire. You see, these 16 normal metals that people use, as I say, they have like little shavings of the metal in like a liquid solution.
And they'll drink to get it.
Yeah, they'll drink like a little vial of something with the shavings of this metal, and they can use it.
It's like that whiskey with gold in it.
Yeah, and there's two other kinds of metal, not of the normal 16. One of them is called, I think it's pronounced atium, and the Lord Ruler's basically hoarded all this for himself. But
I take it
the economy largely depends on this metal.
Right.
And Kelsier believes that if him and his crew can pull off a heist and steal this, then they'll be able to bring the economy of the final empire down, and that'll lead to a Scar uprising.
Yeah, so that's the general idea.
That's the general
of it.
idea.
So
Vin ends up being used as a bit of a spy on the nobility.
Kind of a fantasy heist book.
Yeah. Vin ends up being used to spy on the nobility and infiltrate the nobility.
Okay.
There is a romantic element to this book as
I assume there would be.
Not between Kelsier and Vin, I'd like to say.
You'd like to say, but you can't.
Well, I you know what? I'm going to say it.
Okay, right.
However, It's not in any way a love story. This is a genuine fantasy story with some unique elements.
I don't think we've ever done a love story on Tome Talk.
No, the narrative is quite compelling. The way that the allomancy works is fascinating, and you find out as the story goes on, it's not the only sort of discipline. There's another one, Ferukami, I think it's called, which is more, you have like a kind of metal. It's related to the allomancy. You have a metal, but you can imbue a part of yourself into that metal to store it up for later. So you could store up health, store up time, store up mental energy, things like that. And then there's another kind as well. I think it's called hemalurgy, which is where you're able to not have these powers yourself, but you can transfer powers between different people.
Right.
At a reduced level. So it's quite a well constructed universe. I mean, there is a very good social nature to the story. That's good. I really enjoyed the narrative. I liked seeing the characters develop. Kelsey in particular is quite an interesting character. You do see some development of him, but he's kind of, as you meet him, he's a fully fleshed out character and you're just learning about him. Whereas with Vin, you see a lot more of her developing as a character, as a person, in her abilities, in her confidence.
It becomes less urchiny.
Yeah. And you actually start to think at the beginning that Kelsey really is the core character of the book, and then later on you realise it's actually Vin. That's the main character. But, as I say, I don't want to go into spoilers. There are a number of twists. The book tells you, and what I've told you is where the book leads you initially. But there are twists in the story and the development, and even in the plans and things that come along. So you haven't had any spoilers from listening to this. Everything you've heard, you'd find out very early on in the book as well.
It's in the first 200 pages at least.
Yeah. And actually, I stand by my convictions that this is a good book because I gave you a copy of this book as well.
You did, yes. So I can actually, after listening to you describe it, I can read it for myself, which doesn't often happen with Tome Talk because we're trying to keep ahead of it and have plenty of books to talk about ourselves. So yeah, no doubling up. We can't do it.
Actually, I started listening to the audiobook as well of this recently, and it kind of threw me at first because I didn't realise when I started listening to it that the narrator is the same narrator for the Wheel of Time books. Right. It was produced by the same company. And at first I thought I'd just put the wrong audiobook on.
Yeah.
But
stole all the characters.
This was actually recommended to me by a friend, so I'm sort of passing on that recommendation to everyone else now. Right. It's one that I was recommended to me. I really enjoyed it. The blurb on the back, highly recommended to anyone hungry for a good read from Robin Hobb. I would second that. I highly enjoyed this and recommend it as something quite different to a lot of the run-of-the-mill fantasy books that are out there.
Well, I believe you, and it's good. It sounds good.
So, Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn, The Final Empire, first book of the series. There's, I think, 6 or 7 books in the series in total. A couple of different trilogies, plus a couple of other stories. Highly recommend this. And also, if you get chance, check out some of his other work.
Farewell, Quester. To find out about other productions by the Meddlesome Meeples, then check out our channel or rendezvous with us at meddlesomemeeples.com. Until next time, Quester, farewell and keep thine axe sharp.